And welcome back to Christian World News. China has launched an all-out war against the country's Christians. They're destroying crosses, targeting churches, burning Bibles, and throwing pastors into prison. CBN's George Thomas and Emily Jones give you an inside look at what's behind this latest crackdown in our new segment, World Beat. Take a look.
This is World Beat, the show where we tell you what's happening in the world.
And also how you can pray about it. Well, today, George, we're talking about a country you've been to many times, China.
That's right, Emily. And the question today is, has the world's most populated country declared war on Christianity? In recent months, China has waged an aggressive campaign against Christians, targeting their houses of worship, destroying crosses, burning Bibles, and even arresting pastors. Our next guest once predicted that China could become the world's largest Christian nation. Does he still think that's possible in this climate of persecution? Joining me to discuss China's campaign against Christians is Fang Gongyang, director of the Center on Religion and Chinese Society at Purdue University and a leading expert on religion in China. Thanks for coming on the show. Mr. Yang, has China declared war on Christianity?
Yes, in recent months, there have been a big campaign going on in China.
And who is behind this massive anti-Christian campaign?
Well, the campaign was first experimented in Zhejiang province in 2014 to 2016. Now it has become a nationwide campaign, especially in central China, such as Henan province and the Jiangxi province. This means that the decision was not by a local government official, but must have come from the very top of Chinese leadership, the Chinese Communist Party's Politburo, and the chairman Xi Jinping himself.
And my understanding, Mr. Yang, is that it's not just Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and other faith groups are facing increased scrutiny in government attempts to what they call sinicize religion, right?
Yeah, that's right. The current campaign is on all religions. The campaign is called 中国化 in Chinese. I would not translate that as sinicization or sinification, but the Chinification. Sinicization or sinification implies cultural adaptation. Christians have been doing that all along. In fact, they have done probably too well so that they have converted so many people. But the Chinification is a political campaign demanding for political loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party and the so-called socialist system. The campaign also applies to Taoism. Taoism is a religion originated in China, and how can you become more Chinese than that? It is certainly more Chinese than the Communist Party, which follows foreign leaders of Marx and Lenin. But they require Taoism to go through Chinification too. It means that the Taoist leaders must express their loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, Mr. Yang, these are very serious times in China, and I thank you for coming on the show and providing some insight. Mr. Yang from Purdue University, thanks for coming on the broadcast.
Well, every day it's becoming harder to be a Christian in China. But despite government persecution, believers are not backing down. In fact, more than 344 Chinese Christian leaders released a joint statement declaring their faith in Jesus. They write, "For the sake of the gospel, we are prepared to bear all losses, even the loss of our freedom and our lives." Powerful, powerful words. We're here to tell us more about how the church is responding to this persecution is Todd Nettleton from Voice of the Martyrs. Todd, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Todd, what is your reaction to this declaration from these Chinese leaders, and what does it say about the resilience of the Chinese church?
Well, my first reaction is just a little bit of awe, honestly, at the courage that it takes in the face of an onslaught from a communist government to not only write this letter, but then to sign your name to it, to say publicly, no, I stand for Christ. I don't care what the government does. These pastors know very well what they could face for publicly criticizing the government, for publicly signing this letter. So my first thought is just, wow, what courage they have. The other thought that comes to my mind is the famous Chinese house church pastor Samuel Lamb, who I had the privilege of meeting in Guangzhou, used to say, more persecution, more growing. And he would talk about how the church grew through persecution. And so I think of that, and I think of with excitement about the growth that we're going to see in the Chinese church, even though it comes through stormy waters.
Absolutely. And Todd, you've been to China. You've seen these house churches there. Paint the picture. What is it like to be a pastor in such a hostile environment?
Well, the thing about being a pastor in a house church in China is that every single time you meet, it's illegal. The police could come in at any time. They could arrest you. They could take you off to jail. Now, that doesn't happen every week. Every house church pastor doesn't get arrested, but every single house church pastor knows that they could get arrested.
You talked about how the underground church is growing. How far and how wide has it grown in China?
Well, the underground church reaches every corner of China, and that's the exciting thing is all across China, there are house churches. There are what they call family churches. And the reason the communist government is so worried is because there are far more Christians in China than there are members of the Communist Party. So if your power base, if the way you maintain control is the Communist Party, and you just look at those numbers, you get afraid, you get worried. And so this crackdown, I think, is a direct response to the fear of the Communist Party leaders who see the church growing way faster than the party is.
That's so powerful. Well, Todd Nettleton from Voice of the Martyrs, thank you so much for your insights.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.